Hi, I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and thank you so much for tuning into one of our talks today. I'm so excited today to be joined by the fantastically talented Sophie Okonedo to talk all about the Netflix series Ratched. And I was interested in the fact that you actually first spoke with Brian Murphy about this project when he was still in the midst of writing it, and he already had this idea and conceptualization of who this character could be. And for you, was that a really interesting aspect in terms of character development? Because then he almost, in essence, had you in mind a little bit and was able to really write to your strengths. So, how did those early conversations with him really help a lot of your character development?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have loads of conversations with him. I had like one when I met him, and maybe like a couple of emails. That was it. I kind of just basically went on the script. But I have to say that first meeting I had with him, he described, and they were in the writers' room then, so it wasn't totally written, but he described a kind of arc of what might happen. And I'd say about 60%, 70% of what he said did come into the final script. So it was pretty, he obviously holds a lot in his head about the shape of a series, before it's even written, which is incredible considering he's doing so many different things. So yeah, I felt like when the script arrived a few months later, it was as he said and more. So I was really happy. I only got like one episode sent to me, which is the first episode where I arrived and I had that big scene with Dr. Hanover. And I was like, well, if that's all I end up doing in this series, I'm pretty happy. It's a really dynamic, like amazing sort of part. And I've been 6 months on the stage in London playing Cleopatra and Antony and Cleopatra. And after Cleopatra, one of the greatest roles ever written. And after playing that, I thought, what can I do next? I mean, everything just seemed so dull compared to Cleopatra. And then this came along and I thought, this is the perfect antidote to Cleopatra, that I can come and do this. So I get like 5 personalities to play with. I mean, Cleopatra has more than 5 personalities within her one personality. That's why she's so great to play. So it was the perfect thing to come to. And I felt like everything he said had just been it was more than, so that's good stuff.
And you've talked about how your character development process was really to think about each of them as different individual characters within her multiple personality disorder. And so was that a really vastly different way of preparing, just even in terms of the volume of backstory and character detail that you were creating for each of them individually?
Yeah, I think so. I think that, there was a lot to get together. I had some time to do it, a few weeks, so that was good. It wasn't like sometimes you get jobs and like they start like next week and you think, oh God, I haven't got time. But I did have a few weeks to get it together, and I did think about, shall I really do research into her particular disorder, but I just felt that wasn't going to be very helpful for the actual acting of it, because she was so disassociated that she didn't know from character that she had no memory of the other people she was playing. So there wasn't much. The inner world there were lots of different inner worlds, so I didn't feel it was very helpful. So I thought it was more helpful for myself and more to just make these different characters for each, these fulsome lives for each character. And that was just really fun. And also I had the different dialects to learn, and I loved doing all that. And I had Liz Hemelstein's a great dialect coach, and so I just had a great fun time learning them all, and I didn't really worry about how they would all piece together. I just learned them all separately and just really didn't worry at all until we just did it, so
Yeah.
I didn't worry about how I would change from one to the other.
And you mentioned they're working with a dialect coach and really thinking about that side, but it goes well beyond that as well. Like the intonation in your voice and the different registers that you're pulling in for each of these characters is really astonishing to watch performance wise. And was that something where you were really consciously mapping out what each of their individual voices were going to be, or did you really find it once you were on set inhabiting each of them?
I tell you, I'll be really honest, is that I don't watch myself back, so I've only watched the first 4 episodes. I don't find it helpful to watch myself. If it was helpful for me as a performer, I would do it. I just don't find it very helpful. I'm more free, not knowing how I come across. So I love that you said that. I didn't even perhaps realize I was doing that. I mean, I was going fully for the voice that I felt was right for that person. And of course, they were all completely different people. So I would have but I thinking in detail about it. I was making sure I actually got the voices absolutely right, and I always work with voice. But there's also something that happens inside that I can't put my finger on, really. I'm not exactly sure what happens, but I do a lot of work before I get there. I think very deeply about the part. I learn my lines inside out, but once they say action, I just let go, and I don't really think, and I can often not really remember how I did it or what I did, and that's kind of problematic for doing the second take and the third take, because I want to do different things. But with Michael, the director, I had a lot of freedom, and John is such a kind of, you're only really as good as the people around you, and John was just a brilliant person to have in that scene. He's so professional, so generous and loving and giving, and that he just wants you to do your best, and so he just took it. Whatever I gave him, he just took it and then threw something back, which was great. I had a really good day. I really enjoyed that day.
There's also a huge shift in the physicality that you bring into each of them as well. Like, when she's inhabiting Dr. Hanover, she's really staturing over people, and there's like a real rigidity to the body language and form. And then when she regresses to the younger girl, the body language is much closer to you. And obviously, again, the voice is changing in those moments. Was that very similar to the tone of voice in which it just came very naturally to you and you just really...
Yeah, I'm not a thinking sort of person. I'm like physical person, like everything's in my body. Like if I get upset, I get a rash. I'm just one of those people that everything just gets expressed in my body all the time, which is sometimes a little bit difficult in real life. But for acting, it's a good thing, I think. And so I don't really intellectualize about stuff, and so I just sort of feel the vibrations of it through my body as I'm sort of doing stuff, and so that's just how it works. So I always think I'm not just sort of acting with my mouth or just the top bit. It's sort of everything, so everything can come together. But I have to do quite a lot of work beforehand. I don't just rock up and learn my lines in the trailer. Some people can do that and they're amazing. I don't do that. I do a lot of stuff before I get there.
With the fact that you do so much work before you go into any role, what are the most valuable and necessary things for you to walk onto set or walk onto stage having prepared to then be able to throw it away?
Well, that's a good question. It's kind of different for each part. I think with Shakespeare, when I was doing Antony and Cleopatra, and when I did history plays, and I did Troilus and Cressida and all those Shakespeare plays, it's really the language. It's all in the language of Shakespeare. So you need to understand the language. Really, every reference, you really need to understand it deeply, deeply, deeply. So it's just second nature, and then you can make a modern audience understand it. It's really, if you go to a show and you can't understand what they're saying, they're speaking Shakespeare, they're not doing it well enough. You should be able to understand it. It is totally possible to make a modern audience understand it. Maybe not every single inch, but most of it. And so it is, and it's about the actor having a deep understanding of what they're saying. But with other stuff, it's different, because sometimes with you're doing a film and there's very little dialogue, so it's about other things. It's about having a sense of the character and where they're at and what they're driving towards. And then sometimes I do get cast really late at the last minute, and I just have to I just do a diving board thing. I just throw myself off the edge, and just hopefully my body will do something and something will happen. And that's quite fun too. It's not like ideal every time, but working on television and sort of the long format of television, often actually you're often getting stuff the night before. It's not my favorite way of doing things, but you just have to, it's part of the job. Not everyone's got something in their job that they find difficult, and that's just the way it is, whatever job you do. And that's I do find that a bit difficult, because I'm quite slow at learning lines. And these youngsters, they just literally look at it and go, oh, and then they're just word perfect. I just don't know how they do it. It's really annoying. But yeah, so sometimes you're getting that stuff the night before, and you have to just take a dive off the edge, I mean, as I get older, I'm beginning to feel like I want to be more involved earlier on in scripts, because sometimes I slightly lose my agency as an actor by being given stuff like on the morning of, because I can't ask questions about whether it works or what's happening, or character questions. And I like to ask those questions because I'm so used to being a theatre actor and being in rehearsal and asking lots of questions. You suddenly be told you've got to say that speech in an hour, and sometimes I'm a bit, not sure that I get the best of me like that, but sometimes you just do it, and sometimes it works out to be fun. So
I loved the way when you described the way that you worked on the Crucible with Ivo, and that the first time you all showed up to rehearsal, it wasn't actually sitting around having conversations and asking questions, that he just kind of threw you all straight into a scene, and it was like, we're just going to do it and see what we find. And was that the first time that you'd ever had someone just do that in a theatre medium? And what are some of the elements that then helped you to really uncover by just playing with the text first before even discussing it together?
I think if I really, okay, I'll be really honest. I think that kind of works if you're doing a short run of a play, but of a long run of a play, I'm not sure that is the best way of doing it. Because I think that actually after doing it, when I did it for like 6 months, that show, that detailed work you do anchors you and holds you as an actor when you're doing 8 shows a week for months and months and months. And if you don't do that detailed work, you may do an explosive raw performance for the first 2-3 weeks in previews, but when the time goes on and all that excitement's left, you're left with a kind of slightly empty bottom, and it's quite hard to continue. So I did quite enjoy it initially, I think, and I would have enjoyed it for doing a 3 or 4 week run, but for a longer run, I think I would prefer to have a more meticulous kind of anchoring the characters in and exploring the characters. That's just my personal take on it, I think. But I can only sort of say that looking back on it now, you know. But yeah, there is something to be said, because actually for filming, that sometimes really works. Just stick your costume on, just have a go, see what happens, you know.
And you were touching before on Shakespeare, and it goes so far beyond even what you were just saying about the understanding of the text and really working with it to that degree. There's also such a beautiful pacing and rhythm that comes with that as well, and a musicality to the dialogue. And I've heard you mention frequently how you really love playing around with the language in that way. And what is it so specifically about the way that you really enjoy getting to take that language and really break it down and then build it back up for a performance?
I think that's right. Breaking it down, like breaking down every kind of all the, particularly Shakespeare, because it's written in a kind of iambic, well, mostly iambic pentameter, and it breaks that, and knowing where it breaks it, I didn't even understand any of that. And I did learn some of it at drama school, but I just didn't listen. I was like, oh, boring, I don't want to listen to this bit. And then later on in life, I was like, I really wish I'd listened to all that, because it's actually really good. And then doing Cleopatra, I went back to the National and spent months going every few weeks to see the voice teacher there and saying, I need you to talk to me like I am 15 years old and I'm just learning it for the first time, and we're going to go through every syllable, every single thing that happens that she says, just grammatically. And so for ages, when I was just trying to say her words, it was just very static and on rhythm. And then once I understood what Shakespeare wanted, I could then break it. You see, I could then do my own thing. It's just that once you understand what's holding it up, then you can sort of go off, you know. And do you know what? Actually, now I'm thinking about it, I really feel like I'm doing a Shakespeare quite soon. Now we're talking about it, I'm just like, I've just got to do one next year. This is nothing like Shakespeare. It's fantastic, you know. It's fantastic. Yeah, I'm gonna have to think about that tonight.
It goes back to what you were saying earlier about being spoiled when you did Cleopatra, and then needing something that brings that challenge aspect.
Yeah. I feel like suddenly I've got a wave of like remembering it, and I just thought, oh God, I need to get back on the stage. And I've missed the theatre, and it's been so hard in the pandemic. You know, my theatre friends, I'm so lucky I have a film and television career, and I can, you know, I get a chance to sort of do lots of different things. But some of my friends, like musicians and actors, really that's their source of income, and it's been really difficult. So.
Yeah. And when you were working on Ratched, it's really wonderful, because I think pretty much everybody in the main cast is also a theatre actor. And is there something about the sensibility that everybody comes to set with, in order of like the way that they think about character, the way that they prepare, or even just the way that you all work together in scenes because of that shared commonality?
I think so. I think I just felt like everybody done shows there. Like there was nobody that hadn't been on the stage for quite a large part of their career. And so that, I think everybody's just really professional, comes in and knows what they're doing. They've learnt it, and they're prepared, because that's just the theatre way. They're not late, which is another kind of theatre thing. And also they just have a lot of energy, and also a lot of reserve energy, because when you're doing that many shows, you have a lot of energy that you give out, but you also have a lot in store, you know, because when you start doing a show, you have to sort of be like an athlete. You really got to look after yourself, and look after your sleep and what you eat so that you can get there every night, and look after your voice and stuff. And so everyone has that sense, and also everyone was very good at not just playing moments. They understanding an arc of a story, an arc of a character. And so I was working with people that were like me. It was really nice. It was lovely.
And then I wanted to talk about that scene where she comes in and she's, admitting herself to the hospital with Dr. Hanover, because it's a really, really lengthy scene. But the way in which you move and really use all of the different space around you, and then, when she picks up the chair and then smashes it on the ground. And I thought it was just such a really fascinating use of the space in order to capture all of these different versions of her character. And was that something where a lot of blocking went into it before you were filming it, or was it really about finding the motion and finding the movement in the moment?
We talked about it just like a little bit beforehand, just like we went in just before, had the night before, just to show me the space, because I hadn't seen it, and I was like, oh wow. And then Michael said, oh, do you want to like just mark it out? But I don't do marking out, I just do full performance. So I did the full performance. It's like, all right, so you okay, we can film this now. So, because I just so used to, I can't do that kind of marking thing. I find it really hard. So that's why I often say, maybe we just can we film the first take if possible, because I slightly worry that I when I sometimes mark things out a bit, I always feel like it gives me a kind of signal in my body that I'm half doing it. And so I have never found a way after all these years just to mark it out and then be able to turn it up. I tend to just go for it straight away, and even if it goes wrong, because I never know what's going to happen. And so that way I can just, it's like I'm throwing something out there, see what happens. So I sort of did a full performance, and then a lot of physicality came out of that. And then we repeated some of that. And then I was like, oh, do we have to repeat it? He said, no, the camera's over, you can do what you want. So we also just, did different things each time, So that was really fun. But he said to me, you can use the whole room. And that was just like, oh, he's given me a big stage. I'm very happy.
And with all of the scenes, but with that one in particular, it's really, really phenomenal the way in which you managed to flip your performance to an entirely different character within a split second. And I imagine that may be the first time that you've had to do that within a role before in that way with such speed.
Well, you say that. No, okay. I'm not Cleopatra, she's like that.
Yeah.
See, she changes on a pin. Like, I mean, she literally completely like a little tiny, like kind of loving deer one minute, then she's like a vixen the next minute, and then and within 3 lines of Shakespeare, I've seen more than 7 characters in her. So I'd just done that, so I did understand that, obviously not with the different dialects, but I did really understand. And actually human beings, you can change gear so much depending who you're with, who's in the room. So that was just like, there was like kind of just amping that up a bit, really. I think that's kind of a natural thing within me to be able to do that.
That's really amazing to hear how naturally that actually just flowed, given that it looks so technical behind the scenes when you see it on the screen.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not technical at all. But I suppose there is a technique to it.
Yeah.
But I knew them so well that I could make, you have to know it very well what you're doing to make the sharp turns. I suppose it's like doing a driving course, and you look like you're really doing this crazy driving course as a stunt, but you've marked the course out, you know the turns a bit. So I knew that lines very well. So, but how I did the changes, it's probably different on each take, the way I would do it. So
I'm also really interested in the role that the costumes and hair and makeup details played for you as well, because, when you look at her throughout the series, even when she's sitting in a hypnosis scene with Dr. Hanover, she's still completely pristinely dressed to the nines. And so it's very clear that outward perception is something that's very important to her as a character. Yeah. So how did that help you find a lot of details for her?
Do it's interesting, because sometimes some jobs I get really involved, particularly with more modern things, in the costume. Like I get really involved, saying, I really want, can we just try, and the hair and the wigs. And then sometimes I just rock up and they've just got it. They know what they're doing. And I'm just the costume actually informs my characters the other way around. So sometimes I work from the inside out, sometimes I'm getting from the outside in, so, and with this, it was really, everything was just so perfect when I got there. And the only question I ever asked was when I suddenly got the script. I didn't know that I thought I was going to be in like 1 or 2 episodes. I didn't know she was going to go. That sort of came later. I came back to England. They said, "Well, come back and we've written you another couple of scenes," and so it went on. But when I got the script saying you're now going to, kill Dr. Hanover and then turn into him, I wrote an email and said, to Ryan saying, do you think maybe she would have got his suit or wearing a suit? Would she come back in a suit? And he said, no, absolutely not. She must stay absolutely as Charlotte, and you just have to do it with the acting. No props allowed, no extras. And I thought, oh yeah, and he was absolutely right. That was a really good decision. So that was the only time I ever questioned the costume was then.
When she is just Charlotte Wells, there's such a sense of emotional and mental fatigue of, I've been battling with my own mind for years and trying to push through this trauma and this past of mine. And was that something that came from looking at her history, looking at the trauma she'd experienced, and really just thinking about the weight of that over several years and what that would have done and the exhaustion that would come from it? Or again, was that something that, you just kind of found very naturally on the day as Charlotte?
Well, as soon as I started telling that story of what happened to her, it would just be a big like photograph in my mind, and then I would just be there at the scene. And as I'm telling the story, then it just all sort of, it just happens then, because you're kind of suddenly you're talking about it, and then you're there, and then you're reliving the event, and I'm very empathetic. Is that the right word? That is the right word, isn't it? Empathetic. Somehow something wrong is coming out my mouth, but I don't know. So it's very easy for me to imagine how it is for other people, how it might feel, which is again a great thing for acting. In real life, it makes me a little bit emotional, to say the least.
And I think it was in your Life in Stages interview recently where you were talking about how every single project that you almost have a sense of everybody else knows more than I do, and how that feeds into the way that you approach putting together a lot of character details. And was that something that you had that kind of innate feeling on this project? And then how do you work to really overcome that for yourself when that happens?
Yeah, I think there is definitely, my mantra all the time, and my husband is so bored of it, but my mantra is, I haven't done enough work. Oh my God, I'm really not ready this time. I wish we had another week, another 2 weeks, and I'd be there, but I'm just not ready to go to, I'm not ready to start filming. I'm not ready to start the show. I wish the press night wasn't, so this is, it's a little bit boring. And I just think that's part of my process, but that I always think I'm not ready and haven't done enough. And it's just, I doubt that's ever going to change. I think I'm always going to feel like if only I had another week, then I would really have nailed it. And I think that I do a lot. I do think a lot about it. And there is a fear element, fear-based, which sometimes you wouldn't think would be a creative place to be, but somehow I just it propels me into it, and it's just the way it is. And I always do quite a lot. And coming to Ratched, like, oh, I'm not going to get I won't remember all the dialects. I won't know how to do them all. And and then they all know, and then when I was doing to Raisin in the Sun, it was like, oh my God, I'm playing this iconic American part. I'm just from North London. They're all going to find me out, goes on and on and on. But everyone has that kind of inner voice or inner critic, is it called? But I think with my inner critic, I don't let it kind of consume me. It's just a little kind of motor. And then as soon as I start acting, I forget about it. So.
Well, I have to say, in watching your performance in this series, you were ready and you had done enough, and it's so phenomenal to watch everything that you managed to do with that character and the way that you played around with her. And thank you so much for chatting today, Sophie.
Thank you very much, Mara.